I'm Justin Davis, and this is Drone Camps RC. Hey guys, what's up? Hopefully your week is going well. I have a new quad here to demo and fly for you guys. I have something new from Furibee, and I think Furibee is finally starting to get to the point where they get what we want, which is really good because they're really starting to pack some stuff in here that I like, and I'm pretty particular about what I like on most of my quads, and I have a certain expectation of quality control that needs to be met when I get a plug and fly racer like this. It has to work out of the box, and it needs to be flawless for many flights, and that's really important when you spend around the $200 mark for any type of plug and fly quad. Now this one does have a lot of cool stuff built into it. It does have an FrSky receiver built right in here, and they used the FrSky XM Plus up in here, so it's a full range receiver, and they already have the antennas out the top with zip ties, which I like a lot. I haven't seen that on some of the other plug and flies. Sometimes the antennas are just hanging down, flopping around outside the quad, and you have to secure them somewhere where you think it would be best. Now they already have that done, which is super cool. They also have the XT60 coming out the side, which I do like because it can wrap around like this and it stays out of the props. It's also the correct length. A lot of times these are a little bit long. Sometimes they're out to here, which is just too long for getting in the way. Sometimes you have to twist it sometimes to get it to stay underneath the quad and out of the props. Now they also have a 4-in-1 BL Heli ESC down here. So unlike my Gep RC Leopard that I built right here, you guys saw that on the channel before, it has tattoo ESCs out on the arms. Those are also D-shot ESCs on here, just like this one has, but these are underneath here and they're tucked in out of the way. They already have the wires heat shrinked, which I like a lot. It's a really nice detail. So I think that's going to be really nice for you guys. It's going to automatically keep your wires out of the props. And we have LEDs on the back. We have a gigantic buzzer on here. Look at how big this buzzer is. This is a huge buzzer. So I don't think we're going to have any problems hearing this one out in the fields. We also have a pagoda antenna off the back and already have that tightened down, ready to go. It is a little recessed plate right there, just like the Leopard has, but this one's already set up, and I had some spacing issues with my Leopard. I had a little VTX that was a little bit too large, so it's kind of at an angle. This one's already set up, ready to go, mainly because the third stack up right there is the VTX itself. We have the Kakute flight controller in the middle as well, and you guys know that I like the Kakute. I'm a big fan of that one, so thumbs up for that being on here. And we also have some pretty decent motors on here. We have 2206s, which are a little bit above standard size motors these days, which are about 2205s. 2306s over here. We're starting to use larger and larger motors, but I'm expecting pretty good power out of these. And they also did this kind of purple theme on these motors too, which I like a lot. Now the VTX on top of this stack, this is where it gets pretty interesting on this quad, mainly because it has everything on here that I would want. It does switch up to 300 milliwatt. It's switchable between 25 and 300. I'm not sure why they skipped 200 there, because 200 is pretty standard, but I think we can get away with 300. It's just going to give us a little more range with this particular antenna setup, and if you do have diversity on your goggles, it should be a pretty clean experience. But you know that you're in 300 if you long press on this button on this side right here, and it's a pretty beefy button, by the way. They actually did like a steel button. It's not like a plastic raised button. This is actually a button you can get in here and really feel when you press it. So if you long press it for close to 10 seconds, you'll see a little tiny LED dot pop up right beside the number right here, and that's going to let you know that you're in 300 milliwatts. So long press for close to 6 to 10 seconds and you'll see it pop up, and then you can make that selection and switch back and forth if you want to. But I think this VTX is going to be a really nice one and a win for this particular frame. Now this is a 215 millimeter frame. Speaking of this frame, this is a really interesting frame to me. I have seen so many different frames come through my shop. It is actually kind of insane. And every once in a while a frame comes in that kind of catches me off guard. And check this out. From the side, this is aircraft aluminum across the top here. kind of have these little pieces sticking out here. I think that's kind of like decoration maybe. But this is particularly fancy frame. Do you notice that carbon fiber sort of, it's different than this leopard carbon fiber. Now this is blue, which is cool, but this has a particular pattern. Maybe it's some kind of an overlay on top of the carbon, but it looks really, really cool. Look at that. Isn't that cool? And from the bottom, check this out. This is really fancy carbon fiber. I've never seen carbon look like this. And I'm not sure if this is some kind of glass fiber overlay, like fiberglass overlay, but it's really, really neat. I can imagine you could get all kinds of different patterns in here if you wanted to do some different overlays. These companies are starting to experiment with. It's really neat. Now, one cool thing about this one versus the leopard, this is a unibody on the bottom of this one. So if you break one of these arms, you're going to have to replace the whole bottom. With this one, you just replace one arm. And people always ask me, oh, well, when are parts available? And usually parts are available for brand new frames about 2 weeks after they come out. So if you buy this frame, expect that you can probably get parts for it around the 2 to 3 week range. They usually start shipping kits first, and then they get to doing parts later. But it's sort of a Stretch X concept. And the frame itself, let's just do a little measurement on the frame. I believe it's 4 millimeters on the arms. So a little bit thicker than 3 mil. 4 mil is kind of a standard. I have seen some frames lately that are 5 mil. So they're starting to get thicker and thicker. But I think 4 mil is a good size, because when you get above that, it starts to get a little bit heavy on the frame. So you're just adding extra weight to your quad. Now, another thing we have to talk about really quickly too is this camera on here is actually quite a good camera. This is a 1200 TVL camera with a 2.5 millimeter lens on here. A very, very nice lens. Now, this is interesting because Runcam and some of these other companies that are producing cameras that allow you to go in and change up the OSDs, they usually have a little cable that comes out the back. You've seen it on my channel before, and I have to plug in a little dongle, and then I have to use a little remote control joystick thing to go through the menus. This one actually has it right on the back of the camera. So if you just take this little screw out right here, which is your camera tilt, and remove this bar, you can pull this camera out, or you can do it while the camera is sitting in the quad. If you look really closely in here, let's see if I can get in there. Come on, pagoda's in the way. So look really closely in there. You see that little stick right there? It actually has an OSD joystick right on the back of the camera. And you can press and hold this, and it'll go into the menus, and you can switch around in the menus and change up the brightness, contrast, color saturation, and all those settings inside this camera. So on the fly, without a cable, this is kind of cool. I haven't seen other cameras do this yet. So I am going to give that a thumbs up as well. That's really cool. So no extra cables or wires hanging off the back of this camera. It's just not needed. There's plenty of room in here also for plenty of tilt. Look at the type of tilt I can get out of this thing. So I can go down to a sort of beginner level, or I can go all the way up to a Matty Stunts style, super 60-degree plus type of tilt. But I'll leave it to about right here, and I'll tighten up these 2 screws. Now these 2 screws do come sort of loose, so you can go ahead and set up your camera whatever tilt you want, and then just crank them down with a screwdriver. Now, one difference I do see with the GEP frame and this one is that this LED situation back here is not recessed. It looks like it was an add-on later, but you know, we can deal with that. It's nice to have a buzzer and an LED board on the back of your quad. Now, it also came with like 3 sets of props in there, and these are very similar to some other popular props out there. And what I like about these is they're not super, super high. They're very low profile. If you look at the center hub right here, and you look at the twist of the prop as it goes out, it's not a really super aggressive prop. So I'm expecting that this, as a stock prop, is going to fly quite smooth, because we have a super wide core on the inside, just a little bit of taper here, and a really smooth edge on the outside. So what that's going to do for this prop is going to make it have plenty of power and punch, but it's also going to be nice and quiet once you spool up your quad, especially with running D-Shot 600 on here. this is going to be a nice, quiet, and efficient prop. Now, I like so much about this quad. It has Betaflight OSD and everything on there that I like. Kakute flight controller, 30 amp ESCs, larger size motors, 2206s on there, and a really nice camera with a little OSD joystick in the back. So all of those assets about this quad are a winner, and the detachable arms on here, individual arms, are awesome, and the aluminum frame, this sort of fly egg style frame on here is going to be ultra durable, and the fact they already have the antenna all set up and ready to go, and you have a pagoda on there, so all wins from me. So thumbs up on so many different levels. The only thing that I see so far about this one that I don't like is going to be these bullet nuts, and I wish companies would stop doing this, stop making these, melt them back down, and make other hardware out of these, because these are not good for the racing community. Especially, these are on a lot of new sort of beginner style quads, and the problem with these is the beginners don't quite know that these fly off. These will fly off, and your prop will fly off, and you can have a crash. Problem is, with a lot of guys are using wrenches to tighten these down, just a standard wrench, and you tear them up, you score them because they're super soft, they're made out of aluminum, and they're just not as good as something like a lock nut, like what you see on this motor. This is a much better nut to have on top of a motor. So these are not so great. If you can find some regular nuts to put on here, that's what I would do. I would recommend that. And also, if you're going to use these, use a ratchet wrench, because this is going to get it nice and tight, and it's not going to tear up your bullet nut here. If you use a regular wrench, you're just going to score this all over the place. You're going to tear it to pieces, and you're not going to be able to get it as tight as it needs to be on top of this. So use these with caution. I have had crashes because of these types of bullet nuts for motors. I definitely don't recommend those, but everything else on here looks good. So let's go ahead and get this bound up with my X7 and get it all set up in Betaflight, and let's go out and do a little flight test with this new Furibee X215 Pro. Okay, let's go ahead and weigh this before we go out and fly. I almost forgot to weigh this for you guys. 345 grams, that's with props on. Now with the 4S 1300, we're at 514 grams. Cool. Okay, so let's go outside and fly. All right, let's go ahead and get right into this X215, and I'm gonna let you know what I think about it. The punch out right away looks great. Look at how clear this VTX is. I'm all the way across the field on the other side right there. A little bit of line of sight, of course, but I don't see a whole lot of flicker in this at all. It's a little bit overcast, and I'm going underneath trees right here, and I can still see very, very well. And having trees in between me and the antennas, no flicker at all. Just really rock solid VTX. I'm really pleased with this, and I do have it cranked up to 300 milliwatt right here. But look at all this control I have. It does seem a little bit nimble. I just hit a ghost branch right there. Come back around here, go back into the field. But it's a little bit nimble, and it's on 0.70 on the rates, so it's fairly nimble. And right now I'm just really trying to get a feel for this quad and see what kind of flow it has. It is quite powerful with the 2206 motors on here, so plenty of boost when I'm flying. Most of the time I'm flying right here in like half throttle. Yep, and I lost my battery right there. Went a little too low. It has some nice hang time. I am flying on Betaflight 3.2 on here, so it's already updated to Betaflight 3.2. Look at that, in between the tree right there and myself, and I still have a pretty solid signal. And I've flown other quads recently that I've had a lot of signal issues with, especially with trees. They just don't have good penetration. And this VTX, whatever one it is, it seems to have a nice penetration. Right there I have a lot of branches in between me and the quad. So far as freestyle, this is a monster for freestyle. There's a little bit of prop wash you can see once I switch direction and start to power back up. When I hit the yaw and I come back around, you can see a little bit there. But here I'm just trying to see how it is, nice and smooth, letting off the throttle a little bit. I get really excited when I fly a new quad, so I tend to punch it a lot when I first go up. So we're trying out a nice little slow knife edge. But now I'm really starting to get a feel for the throttle, and the throttle is really decently sensitive on here. but I still have plenty of control, even low to the ground with this quad. So if you're gonna use it for racing, it's definitely gonna be a competitive racer. No one's gonna make fun of you for having this Furibee. There's a little bit of wash right there when I switch direction. But the camera's amazing on here. It's overcast and I still see a really nice color saturation. I see a really nice signal coming back to the goggles. I see nice definition under the trees. When I go under, there's not a big difference in light variations and changes with the camera. The OSD is nice, and you can move a lot of this stuff out of the way in Betaflight. It's all changeable inside Betaflight, so that's definitely a win for this quad too. Getting in a little bit close to these trees right here, dipping down a little low. But I gotta say, I'm really impressed with the X215, and I had low expectations for this one. So I went into this with very low expectations, and I never know what to think about a quad until I actually get it out in the field and start flying it. But I'm looking forward to more packs with this one because it has a tremendous amount of power and smooth control. The Kakute is perfect on this. This flight controller is perfect. I have no complaints with Betaflight, the ESCs, the motors, the camera, the frame itself, replaceable arms. Everything seems to be perfect. One of the best Furibees yet to come out. So I'm very impressed with where they're going. They're doing their research, which is really important to all of us, that we get the stuff we want on a quad. So I can recommend this one for sure. Thanks for watching, you guys. I will see you on the next one. I'm Justin Davis. Take care, you guys. Peace.